This morning, I'm going to be talking about the Ashramic leader. Obviously, by using the word Ashramic, we're talking about something very esoteric. So I was thinking last night as I was reviewing the talk and imagining if I was a new person listening to this subject, would this talk really give me a good understanding of what an ashram is or was? And I decided no, that it did not. So things work out the way they're supposed to. So I, this morning, got up a little bit early and pulled out the ashram book from which this morning's talk is derived. And I didn't even want to put the book down. It's so beautiful, and the information is so in depth and so futuristic for our divine spark, at least for most of us. But I did manage to find something I think that will help you understand what an ashram is, but also know that we've barely touched the surface. So this is the book. It's called Ashrams by Torgrim Serdarian. And I really encourage you, if you're interested in the subject, to purchase it if you haven't yet. And you can go to White Mountain's website and their online bookstore and order it. Or just call the office and they'll be glad to fill your order. This particular definition is from the end of the book, a chapter titled Appendix. And these are basically excerpts on the topic of ashrams taken from the Discipleship in the New Age, Volume 1 by Alice Bailey. Again, this is written by Torgrim, and he just put this in toward the end of the book. He says, the purpose of the ashram and the training which it gives is to enable the disciple to live truly on every plane which he has succeeded in opening up to his consciousness. The Tibetan says no one is integrated into an ashram until he or she has pierced beyond the confines of the purely personal levels of awareness, until he is sensitive to the ray and quality of the master of the ashram, and until he is normally soul conscious. These are the first indications of what I might call ashramic consciousness, a consciousness devoid of self-interest and always preoccupied with the essentials of spiritual living. So that is just a wee little revelation on the subject of what an ashram is and what the purpose of an ashram is, and a little bit about ashramic consciousness. So now I'm going to share the first part of the talk this morning is pretty esoteric. And then we're going to move more into what some of you would call the practical, and what I would call the training aspect of preparing yourself for an ashramic consciousness. Again, this is most of this is taken from a chapter out of the ashram book, and it's from chapter 8. What was that? Oh. It's one of those mornings. Our webinar is not working very well. It's because the sun is out, but the clouds are trying to come back in. So just bear with me here, because it really is beautiful. The talk is so beautiful. The information is so beautiful. So let me begin here. When I became a member of the ashram, now we're talking about an earthly ashram. And what was interesting to me, what drew my attention, to the fact that not everybody knows that there is an ashram beyond the physical form. That was before, I knew about the book and before I'd read anything, but I certainly had had experiences of higher ashrams or ashrams in the supermundane world. So when someone said, oh, I didn't realize that there were higher ashrams, I just thought there was one, in the physical plane. So I thought, well, I better talk this morning about the physical plane ashram. But just know that a physical plane ashram, a true physical plane ashram, is an outpost of a higher ashram. And that the training that takes place within the physical form, the physical plane ashram, is the training that helps you expand your light, increase the light of your consciousness in such a way that you dedicated yourself to undergo certain personality purifications. And in the process of purification and the resulting service that you and the Ashramic group engage in allows you to become initiated into the next subtle plane where a more subtle ashram is in operation. And then you graduate from that stage to a higher and higher and higher. So there are ashrams on each plane of consciousness. There are ashrams in each plane of consciousness. And our challenge in the physical form ashram, once again, is to prepare ourselves so that we can consciously enter into, as a result of our preparation, into higher ashrams. Okay? Okay. When I became a member of the physical plane ashram, at my first meeting with the group, I noticed that when the leader came into the meeting room for a membership meeting, everyone stood respectfully and beautifully, concentrating solely upon the leader. As he came closer, everyone put their right hand over their heart and bowed about 90 degrees. Later, I learned that bending at this angle was significant because it means that you were respecting the leader horizontally as well as vertically. Isn't that beautiful? You see how and why I said at the very beginning that this is deeply esoteric. This understanding of what an ashram is and the activities and behaviors of an ashrami is very different from today's world, today's modern society. But that's what some of us are here for and want to be part of. When the leader came into the room, everyone stood up. I couldn't help to think about President Obama, for example, because yesterday, the big announcement of what he wants to do, take our country into Syria and teach them a lesson. But he's going to go to Congress first. And as he was, I waited for 30 minutes for him to, because I'm on my iPad, and Huffington Post created a direct line, and here's the stationary picture of the Rose Garden, and the aisle and the White House from which he's going to walk down and stand at the lectern. And I'm thinking about the Ashramic consciousness. What respect the media gave to President Obama. It was very beautiful. And then when President Obama and Vice President Biden came out of the White House and a little way down the walkway and then up to the lectern, I noticed that Vice President Biden walked just a few steps behind President Obama. So I don't know if you were aware of that, if you happened to see it on television, and it's then played 3,000 times over and over and over again on CNN. But that is part of an ashramic behavior, giving respect to our leader. Even as great of a leader as Vice President Biden is, he stepped 2 or 3 steps behind the president as they came to the lectern. It was very beautiful. Okay, let me go back to the talk. Now, when the leader came into the room, everyone stood up. Well, I didn't see that so much with yesterday, but I certainly have seen it at various times. I realized that the threads of energy were going from the members to the head of the leader. See, this is the esoteric properties or activities that are going on when you have an ashramic consciousness. So why was that, and how could that be? It is due to the fact that the leader's head center was enlarged. It was enlarged because it is connected to higher forces. Now just think about this. How could it be connected? How could his head center be connected to higher forces? This is through the 1,000-petal lotus. And those petals are like antennas that send out and receive energy. So the greater the leader, the more active that 1,000-petal lotus is. When the members put their hand over their heart and bowed, energy from their heart went to their leader. It circulated throughout his entire aura and then radiated back to the members with a little additional energy. That energy is the linkage, our linkage to the higher forces. Higher forces take the members' energy, circulates it, and refines your energy, and then gives it back to you 100% more pure than what you initially gave. Isn't this different? You know, so when people say, I don't believe in leadership, and there are many, many, many disciples and esoteric communities out there that do not believe in leadership, even though there are plenty of leaders of those non-believers. It's because they don't know. They don't have the sense to feel and to hear and to see and to think and to know what is going on. It's because we are becoming more and more dense and material as the ego inflates the personality life. And we begin to lose sight of these beautiful traditions that began in ancient times. So everyone remained in that meeting, everyone remained standing until the leader sat down. And once he sat himself, then everyone sat down in unison. It was so beautiful. As the ashramic leader speaks, his consciousness is so enlarged and united with all his listeners. There is a synchronization between those who listen and the one who speaks. The leader flows with creativity. Isn't this beautiful? Doesn't this put us into a whole nother world of life? And it's so beautiful and so pure and so harmonic that I think it's very difficult for the personality-centered consciousness to spend much time in that harmonic. If you're a musician, you know what a harmonic is. A harmonic is a higher note of the lower note that's being sounded. So when a leader sounds a note, he starts at the harmonic level. And it is so refined, that harmony, that harmonic note is so high in frequency, depending on the leader, is so high in frequency and so resonant in nature that it will activate your awakening soul. If your personality is in control of the soul, then there will be resistance, and you begin to contradict and criticize and have resistance to what the leader is saying and the leader, him or herself. It's just because of where that person's level of consciousness isn't yet, we put it that way. But nonetheless, despite the reactions of the personality, the soul is hungry for that frequency, that harmonic frequency. So the soul is opening up a little bit and then reacts. And the reaction is the result of these elementals that are so happy. It's like a teenager, so happy when he gets his car keys, right? And goes driving crazy down the street. Bye, Mom, bye, Dad. And go out into mass consciousness and quickly comes home because you can't handle it. You know, it's the elementals that love to misbehave. So the elementals are saying, no, no, no. And the soul is saying, but I'm going to take charge over you someday. So as you put yourself in the radiance of such a leader, where that leader initiates a talk through a harmonic note, and that energy begins to precipitate, into the room and into the heart and soul of his listeners, changes are occurring. And then someday, the soul becomes so awakened that he has a strong desire to find his soul group. To find your soul group means that you are looking for your ashramic group. I think let me share this story again just because it came back in my mind. I know most of you have heard it, but the second year that I had time to spend with Torkim, I was allowed a personal appointment with him, and I was so naive. With my words. And he sat down and I sat down facing him. And he said, what is your question, Jolene? I said, I am looking for my ashram. And he said, honey, you found it. It was, a special moment, a special day, and also humbling. If you ever have been a part of an ashramic experience, true ashramic experience, you will never forget it, and it will stay with you forever. It is a reflection of ashramic meetings in the super mundane world. Such meetings stay with us in our hearts forever. The energies of these experiences become a fountain of beauty for our future. It accelerates the evolution of our soul and increases our desire to be of service to humanity and hierarchy. Now you may say, but I do have a deep desire to serve humanity, or to serve a group, or to serve this person. The difference between an ashrami and an individual who has a strong desire is motivation and intention. An ashrami wants to serve to help the world evolve. An ashrami, like Helena Rourke, did not want to serve in the limelight, did not want a beacon of light to shine upon her wherever she walked or served or met with many, many groups of people. That's because she had that ashramic consciousness, which is one of humility, one who truly believes that if she's not seen, she can do greater work than one who draws attention to herself or himself. Now, sometimes an initiate has to be seen in the public and will have that beacon of light upon him. But in his nature, he is humble. And he draws attention to his work, not to who he is and who he gives and what he expects back. So that's the difference between one who has the ashramic consciousness and one who has a desire to serve for personality reasons. Today's disciples do not know their value. They don't know their worth. They're not awakened yet. And so the teacher who has that 1,000-petal lotus functioning has the ability to see these disciples who are still asleep. When they come into the group, they come into a discipleship group, then that harmonic note of the teacher is struck. And if that disciple has the hunger and that distant memory of what it means to live life as a disciple, as a soul, they're going to awaken and move forward, advance in consciousness very, very quickly. If not, because they do not know such things about themselves, they don't respect who they are. Seems odd, doesn't it, when you read the Tibetans' books and you read Torgham's book, Challenge for Discipleship, and you learn all about discipleship, and then to think about a disciple who doesn't know who they are. It seems odd, but there are so many people in the world, so many disciples in the world who are of that stature and whom we are trying to wake up, because we need awakened disciples today. When a person does not respect him or herself, it is unlikely that he's going to respect his parents, his teachers, or leaders. Parents must learn how to teach their children, to teach them about the principles of life, to teach them discipline, and discipline not in a commanding way, but in a way that speaks to their soul, and that their soul will step out and their personality steps behind the soul, and they become an extraordinary human being. And yet, from the higher worlds, that child is not extraordinary, they're normal. You see, they're not normal compared to today's society of younger people. So it falls on the shoulders of awakened men and women who are parents to really teach their children at a very young age about the principles and values of life. They must teach their children how to respect not only themselves, but their brothers and sisters, their parents and grandparents, and even their godparents. They must take them to church or a spiritual meeting, especially when they are teenagers. Isn't that interesting? And our experience has been just the opposite, is the children come to the classes until they reach middle school or high school, and then they leave. And then they've gotten into a lot of trouble. But eventually, if their parents are wise, they're going to bring them back so they don't waste their life. If they don't bring them back, if they don't take the time to teach these kids to grow up in society respecting the basic values of life, they will have lost the beautiful essence of their children. And thus, these will be children who have wasted their lives. I know this is a difficult pill to swallow. I know it is. But we have a choice, how we're going to raise our children or not. Here's a quote from page 104 of the Ashram book. It says, "The hierarchical principles of behavior will mold and regulate, which mold and regulate are based on the science of energy. The teacher would sit at the top of the triangle or circle because of the circulation of energy." You see, the circulation of energy affects space, affects the environment, and affects us. There's a beautiful story in the book, and it says this. In one temple, we had a sanctuary that was very beautiful and mysterious. It was a cave. When the leader would appear, we would all prostrate ourselves totally before him. At first, I thought it was a very hypocritical way to act. But after observing this practice for a while, I discovered that the teacher transfers to you all the positive electricity, which you can control by grounding yourself. The energy can then circulate throughout your aura because you are grounded. If you do not ground yourself, there is no electricity. When the teacher enters the room to speak with you, you should stand to show your respect. See, now we're talking about an ashramic group. Or the same is true for your parents. This happened when I was a child. This is how our parents were treated. Especially when Mom would come into the room. We would show our respect in various ways. If you are walking, this is from the chapter, if you are walking with your teacher, you should walk at least 1 or 2 feet behind in order of your rank. Well, this is not something that people practice today. They usually are just the opposite. They're going to push themselves ahead. You go out to lunch, let me order lunch first, and then we'll let the teacher order. If it's raining, let me go through that door first, and oh, come on, teacher. That's because we don't hear that I can't say that word this morning, harmonic note. We don't hear that harmonic note yet. But when you do, you'll gladly walk 5 feet behind the teacher because it's a humbling experience. It's saying that we're putting something greater than ourselves in front of our personality or our ego. The book says, we used to do this when teachers would come down from the Himalayas, from deep within the mountain and caves. Once a very old man who looked like a total skeleton came And his energy immediately shook all of us, and we immediately hit the floor. You can see these little kids, you know. One cannot bypass a higher link. One cannot bypass a higher link to get to the next higher link. A person cannot go directly to Santa Kamara with his complaint. He must go to the next higher link. The next higher link will take it to the next link, and so on. For example, the disciple takes his complaint about a group member to the teacher. And the teacher takes it where? To who? No, the solar angel. The teacher takes that complaint of the disciple to the disciple's solar angel. And there is a discussion. If the disciple is advanced, then the teacher takes that complaint to the master. Or sometimes the senior initiate. See, it depends on your level of consciousness. Why is that, you ask? Because it determines, your consciousness determines the resonance of your complaint. You're not going to take a low frequency complaint to the master. The teacher isn't going to do that, believe me. And sometimes not even to the solar angel. We must also show respect to women in similar ways. I can remember when I was young how men would stand up when a woman entered the room, or he would hold a door open for her. Whereas today it's not so common to see these things happen. And actually sometimes women are not even open to it. They say, I'm independent. You know, I don't need you to open the door. See, they're only looking at it from a very dense, material, personality way. Opening the car door for her, pulling out the chair at the table, and helping her to sit down. All of these little actions are a sign of respect to the woman, to the feminine principle. The mother must be respected to the highest degree, just like the teacher or leader of the group must be respected to the highest degree. Now here's the catch. Of course, the teacher or leader or mother must be respectable. If she is not, and we're talking about the teacher or leader here, not the mother, then you must immediately leave. In many esoteric schools, God is not described as a male energy. The teaching tells us that God has no form. Certain holy scriptures describe God as the Father, but certainly he is both Father and Mother. And why is that? It's because he has the compassion of a woman. There's such a beautiful story in the book, and this is it. In the monastery I attended, he says, the highest ranked individual there was the teacher's mother. One day, the teacher entered the room. We stood and gave the salutation and then sat down. A few minutes later, his mother entered the room. He went to her, kneeled, and kissed her hand. He sat in his chair. She sat in his chair and talked with us for 2 hours. I know, imagine a culture like that today. A few weeks ago, actually, it was a little longer than that, I talked about Taurus. They didn't or don't want to be known, always preferring to do their work without recognition. They are not ambitious. This is a very key point to remember. If you see a woman that you believe to be a Tara, ask yourself, is this woman, is this teacher ambitious? If she is, then she's not. They are not ambitious. They are totally dedicated to their service work and are oftentimes recognized as humble servants. Think of Helena Rourke. They're recognized, oftentimes recognized as humble servants by those whose work becomes world renowned. But those whose hearts are externalized, they are recognized as Taras, as members of hierarchy. We learned that masters do not always take male appearance. This is so interesting. Now we learn why that was. Women masters were so clever that they did not pollute their auras with the base thought forms that our male masters do. Women masters are always in the backyard, working with interplanetary, solar, and cosmic dimensions, without letting anyone know that they are doing it. For example, you would never see Helena Rourke in any leadership position. With her husband, it was her husband, Nicholas, who organized cultural movements and discussed peace policies with various nations, and even with President Roosevelt. Where was Helena? At home, with the door closed, in contact with higher worlds. There are between 35 to 40 women masters whose names we have never heard because they are very advanced and clever enough not to reveal their names to us. Women today are leading esotericism and wisdom in this world. Do you see this? If we do not, our eyesight is clouded, or we are deluded into thinking in the past. Women especially need to understand this. Helena Blavatsky, Helena Rourke, and Alice Bailey started 3 New Age hierarchical centers, bringing in the whole teaching. And now, today, many more women are doing this very same thing. Christ was a student of Mary. Do you want me to go on, or should I stop here? Christ was a student of Mary. When Christ left, it was Mary who organized the church. She was the head of everything. She was the mother of many saviors. She kept them in her womb for 9 months and taught them. When they were born and finished their work, then she continued on. She was known as Isis, as Maya, Lord Buddha's mother, as Miriam and May. She was even the mother of Hiawatha and of many saviors of South America. She is a great universal figure and is one of the Pleiades. The chapter says, if a woman were put in charge of a humanity whose consciousness thinks that women are inferior slaves, they would not listen to her. So the hierarchy is an executive branch. It is very businesslike. And thus, in the past, I'm putting the past, that's my own word, in the past they assigned a man to the task because humanity will only listen to men at its stage of development. However, she says, this is slowly changing, and a few women are attaining leadership positions. And once again, we have the speculation in this country, in the United States, of a woman in 2016 becoming president. So we're working toward that end. It was a dark psychology that kept women in darkness, saying that women are nothing but a machine to bring in children, wash clothes, and be man's slave. This has been the psychology for thousands of years and continues in some religions and countries today, even in this country today. How can we expect our daughters and women who have been enslaved for so long to suddenly act like they are free? Currently, it is in America where women are becoming recognized for their true beauty and worth. The American spirit is really beautiful, but it has been polluted by certain elements which must be cleaned. But essentially, the American spirit is beautiful and it is feminine. America is a sixth ray, which is feminine, and second ray, which is also feminine. The book indicates that, quote, "This is why American women are further ahead than women in any other country, even England, which is why the new age will be created here if women stand in their role." There was a question posed in the chapter about men asking where or what is the man's role? And here is the answer. A man is a woman's equal, her helper. If she is singing and needs a piano, give her the money for a piano. As they support us, we support them. It is yin and yang, night and day. One is not superior to the other. Both are equal. A woman's mechanism is more complex than a man's because she has a more complicated consciousness and a more complex mechanism. And I'm going to end there. Isn't that beautiful? So if you have nothing to read, I know that's pretty fun. Pull out your book on ashrams. If you don't have it, you can contact the office or go online to White Mountain's website and to the online bookstore and order it. It's so beautiful.